London Property, home of Super Prime, where you can find informative, educational and entertaining content covering all aspects of property.
Hello and welcome to London Property, home of Super Prime. I'm your host Farnaz Fazaipo, and today we're in conversation again with Kate Bright, who's going to share some of her wisdom with us about security for ourselves and our family. Welcome back to the show, Kate.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Kate, just for our listeners who might not have heard your previous conversations with us, would you just give us a little intro about yourself, just to put things into context?
Absolutely. So I am a chartered security professional, one of a very small handful of women in the UK that are registered as such. I've spent the last 24 years working for and with private clients internationally. And our theme within the business umbrella that I set up is secure lifestyle. So we aim to try and help our clients feel and be safe. And that is through a combination of the recruitment, advisory and project management services that we provide for them.
Brilliant. So last time we spoke to you, we had a very, very insightful conversation about how to get secure just before the carnival starts in Notting Hill. And today our conversation is going to be for parents who are sending their children away to universities and to other countries. And what are the top tips that you would have to give to parents and their children when this is happening?
Well, I think it's a time that is one of the most sort of high risk, shall we say, particularly where for some of our clients, they've kept their children in what we would call a gilded cage. So they've not had to experience making mistakes and learn from them. And so I think for the rest of us, I think if we use those themes that we use with our clients is that from as young an age as possible to start to have conversations about feeling safe and safety. And I think the thing with raising children in today's society is that certainly in the last 15, 20 years, we now have a two-prong attack of physical and digital safety. So not only do parents have to think about their children being safe when they're in the physical world, but also digitally as well. So I think if we sort of pull it right back to being able to have conversations with children and separately, we can talk about how young, I believe, and we've had great results that you can start talking to children, certainly having that ability for children to, or young people, let's say, I'm going to say children just because they're always our children, to be able to talk to you and talk to you when things have gone wrong, but also ideally creating a safe space for them to be able to speak to you about things they may be concerned about. And let's distill it down to safety being peace of mind, and safety being that ability to hone a gut instinct. And I think higher education is that sort of first move into the big wide world of having to hone this gut instinct. And so I think some of the tips that we use with our clients is for using the example of going to a university environment, having that preparatory mindset, going with your child to the campus and helping them to orientate, helping them to get the people and the contacts on site that they will call if things are not as they should be. And again, that sort of community focused approach as well. If children feel like they're on their own and don't have a sort of friendship group, that can be a really intimidating sort of environment for them to be in. So helping them to understand that by participating and getting involved with all of the different sort of types of activities and things that are on offer, particularly where they're presented in things like Freshers Week. I'm a big advocate for being part of sports groups, whether you're sporty or not. You can be part of a logistics setup. I know there are a few people on my netball team at university who couldn't throw a ball to save their lives, but they got us to all of the national competitions. And as a result, they were part of that sort of community. So I think this idea that we sort of let them just become adults overnight has to be coupled with, I think, a little bit of hand holding in those initial stages. And I think the best results that we've seen are when parents will help to settle young people into new environments, help them to build things like situational awareness training. And there are some great resources online to do that. L'Oreal has a great bystander training course, which is totally free. And that's something that elements of which we would lift into the bystander training and the situational awareness training that we deliver to young people too. So what to do, how to know when things aren't as they should be, what to do, what to say, and when to remove yourself. I think they're really good kind of sort of foundational building blocks to help to encourage and guide young people to really take control of their own feeling of safety.
So it's really important that when you are going to new university, to actually get engaged and not be a kind of an invisible person, so that you're noticed if you're not there, as it were. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's one of the key parts that we believe at Umbra is a sort of one of your secret weapons is to be able to have community. We're always saying to our clients, and in the case of rising crime trends that we can talk about, one of my top tips for people that are unfortunately experiencing, if not burglaries themselves, then in their own street, is to set up a neighborhood watch WhatsApp group. That serves two purposes, which is building that community, looking out for each other, but also then comparing and contrasting, helping each other where and as and when there is crime taking place, with capturing of images and helping with that sort of information sending to policing, which is a really important part of supporting police activity. The police don't have the resources to be everywhere and anywhere at the moment, so we have to help support them. And one of the biggest things you can do is create community. So I think if we distill that back to young people going to university, I think it's a really good opportunity for them to understand the power of community and the power of coming together, and certainly knowing who's on the floor of their building, knowing who's in the sort of the vicinity of them in their halls of residence, and being able to set up those sort of community-based groups is a really good starting point. But yeah, if commonality of interest is what humans are all about, and I think we all feel safer as part of a network or a group. And so I think it serves many purposes to get young people involved with groups and activities, not least of which to enable them to be able to sort of come together and safety in numbers. So yeah, we would recommend getting them as involved as possible, and that's quite hard at the start because it's a big step, it's a new move. You're normally going sort of there's a physical, locational, geographical distance between you and your home environment that you know really well. So I think if you can invest as much time in going up and helping to sort of orientate, I think that's a really good starting point, without being the sort of helicoptering, which, as we all know, is easy to fall into that trap.
So, I mean, we're fortunate enough that we live in a country that generally speaking, we walk around feeling safe. And I know that for most of us, we're not in danger that often. So we're not sort of alert to this. But do you have any top tips about things that we should be carrying around with us, just on our person, in our handbags?
So we have a bodyguard in a bag series that we promote through our Instagram and online. I think it's not necessarily about the things that you would think, and of course, things like torches and alarms are a good way to attract attention and deflect unwanted interest. But I think the most important things for me, particularly for young people, is to be able to keep phones charged, having charging packs. Enabling us to sort of really reinforce to young people that these devices have become our navigation tools, they've become our safety tools, they've become the way that we can help signal safety for ourselves, but also for other people. And I like carrying multiple charging packs around with me because we all know those moments where you meet with somebody and they say, "Oh my goodness, I haven't charged my phone," and you can be that person that helps that other person to be able to keep themselves with a device that can help them in case they need it. So that's my of any tip, that's my sort of top tip, is keeping those tools that we have already on us, charged, ready to go, and able to help us. Things like privacy screens as well. I think I'm certainly a big fan for when you're out and about and in new places, having privacy screens for laptops and phones. It just keeps your information private, keeps what you're doing private, and it's a good way to sort of prevent yourself from having people, what we call shoulder surfing, and seeing what you're doing. But yeah, I think that the main things that I would carry around with me are the ability to to keep our handsets ready and charged. And 25 years ago, when I was at university, we didn't have mobile phones, so it probably would have been boiled right back down to that idea of situational awareness and you're investing time in honing the gut. And that is, as I say, something that you can do for free online, literally right now. Tap in L'Oreal, buy standard training, but also something that we can lift out in that glide path before young people leave home, to get them into situations where they have to think about drink spiking, and they have to think about situations that they might be presented with where they need to have strategies to remove themselves, and understand what is right and what feels right. So yeah, physical actual things to keep in your bag, but again, I always place that real importance on not just getting into the kind of tech and the gadgetry, but actually knowing that you can use the right sort of aspects of your own kind of honing your gut. I think is one of the best toolkits that you can hone and have in your toolkit.
And what's your best advice about headphones? Because everybody's, walking around with these big headphones on their.
Yeah, so I now only use ear over bone headphones. So my headphones of choice at the Aftershocks brand. Number one, I was putting my ear pods in, and it was making my ears really itchy and funny. So I was on the lookout for something a little bit more kind of less intrusive. But if you think about wearing the big sort of Bose or the big sort of over ear headphones, you're completely oblivious to what's going on around you. And so even keeping, one of the earphones off at all times, particularly when you're things on public transport or trains, from a practical perspective, a train can change direction. It can change a stop. People can get on it that you perhaps might want to, be moving away from. And if you're not aware, then you can't move. And so the benefit of over-ear earphones, for me anyway, is I can use them when I'm running and they don't fall out. I was losing, an earpod a month, which is an expensive habit to be undertaking. But the over-ear earphones would probably be my trick of choice. It's since I've moved to these, I haven't had any ear problems, and also I'm aware of what's going on behind me when people are running up behind me, and they're running in the park. When I'm doing my morning walk, I'm able to move out of the way and not get sort of concerned that there is anybody coming up behind me. So yeah, that's a sort of an easy, quick win, if you like, to avoid.
Okay. And personal alarms. What about personal alarms?
Good for confidence building, to know that you've got something on a key ring that can deflect or attract attention. I mean, deflecting the sort of unwanted attention. We all talk about we shouldn't have to keep our keys in our hand when we're walking through places that we feel uncomfortable. I err on the side of caution of, if you're in a place where you're needing to keep your keys in your hands, our situational awareness training would dictate that you shouldn't be there in the first place. So it's a tricky one, because again, young people going to places that they haven't been to before for the first time, it's a perfect storm of potentially taking a wrong turn and being in a place, particularly where there's lack of light, where opportunistic crime can occur. My advice would be not to be there in the first place. And if you can have a card that you can put on an Uber account or a Bolt account, and that's going to be used only in the case of emergency, particularly in winter months, I would say. If you're able to encourage that with young people, I think that's a really good, healthy way of encouraging them to think about that safety, even if they don't use it, or even if they're using it too much. I think that, again, it creates conversation as to why you were using it. Why did you feel unsafe?
So we're talking about children going off to university and youngsters. I mean, what sort of awareness do they need to be taught, and how much should they know how to protect themselves physically? I mean, is it important to take judo? What would you say about karate, all these kind of self-defense and what have you?
So as part of my close protection, my bodyguard training, you do what's called hard target combat, or what was called hard target combat training. And that's a sort of very sort of physically led bit of training that you do as part of your course, more to know when not to use physical restraint and force. Because if you're doing that, then who's looking after the person who you're meant to be sort of protecting? So I really got into things like Krav Maga. I believe that Krav Maga as a skill is a very instinctive, very kind of it's a methodology that I would say is the most useful for simulating real life situations. I think the benefit of anything karate based, judo based, is its community, its activity. So big ticks in the box for me from a number perspective. Though both those things are really good, and any confidence building that arises as a result of it. What I would say is that, I of course have undertaken Krav Maga training, but I don't want to have to use it. And so this is the sort of the key thing. I think building confidence is only as good as the situations that you find yourself in, where if you're going to have to use that sort of protective mechanism, then in my mind, it's already too late. So a lot of our training centers around situational awareness. And I would say if there's an investment to be made in your safety for anyone from the age of 8 to 88, then having somebody walk you through and honing that situational awareness piece is a really good investment, because you will find that you will not put yourself in situations where things don't feel right, and you will not be walking around places holding keys, because you just simply will choose another way and not be in that situation. So I think the physical aspect of being safe is one we need to sort of not confuse with the kind of cellular, the Hollywood images of sort of self-defense and martial arts being the sort of the solution to being safe. I think I'd build on that in terms of university experience, where you already have an on-site security team. So perhaps a better use of your time alongside physical activity, which I would always support, is getting to know the on-site teams that are there to support you, making sure that your child is aware and looped into the pastoral care, because I think this idea that we keep our children in a gilded cage is only as good as, particularly digital risk and safety, of the first thing that they see or experience that they have to handle themselves. And unfortunately, in today's world, with the physical and the digital risk and threat, it's not a case of if it happens, it's a case of when. And it's what you do when you experience something that is not, in your frame of reference, a safe experience. And it's only when you see something from a digital perspective or experience something digitally, it's about what you do next. And I think if we can start to educate young people and adults even as to the what you do next bit is really important. We can try and prevent, but actually, it's if we are going to experience negative events, it's what do we do in that first 24-hour period, how we engage with policing, how we engage with pastoral care, how we engage with security teams that are there to support us. And I would build on also that WhatsApp group mentality of neighborhood watch. Well, actually, if you have an on-site security team, knowing that you are part of a regular patrol, for example, knowing that your halls of residence is included on some sort of CCTV mapping, and little things like that, which I think if more parents actually and more young people, it was led by more young people, said, we want to feel safe. How are we being made to feel safe? It would be one of the metrics that we would use when we choose places that we go for higher education. And so we're really trying to promote and push universities to talk about some of the excellent work that they're doing to particularly protect young people, particularly in those first few weeks when it is a new experience for everybody, helping to signpost and know who to talk to, where to go, and how to feel safe. So yeah, I think the let's not get too caught up in the martial arts aspect, but I'm all for, if that's a group that you want to join in Freshers Week, that is a fantastic tick in the box from a safety point of view, to join a community of people that want to keep fit through learning about the ancient art of protection.
But actually, it's interesting when you say that, the universities and all these, they're doing a great job at keeping a high level of security going. The more you know about what they're doing, then the more you're naturally going to be more aware as well, because a lot of us just walk into places, take it for granted that, there isn't actually all these things that go on in the background that we're unaware of. So knowing the details of that actually makes you think, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be so blasé about security. Maybe it should be something that is a little bit more in the forefront of my mind. Digital is a big subject. Obviously, when they're younger with children, you can control that. You can try and block it, but very soon they figure out how to get past you and past any protection that you put on trying to remove the access. So talk to us a little bit about digital security and what is a good thing to teach about digital security, and when is it that your alarm bells need to be going?
So the first thing I would say is that creating that space for conversation is really important, because and we've now modeled it around the age of 8, and there's some fantastic resources from the National Cybersecurity Centre that they have a thing called the Cyber Sprinters program, and it sort of simulates the kinds of things that you can experience digitally, from email hacking and phishing all the way through to sort of online content, harmful online content, online bullying, and things like that. I think a bit like when we said 25 years ago, we put the sort of PG-18 rating on movies, and how we all of us, I'm sure, managed somehow, whether it was a sleepover or inadvertently seeing scenes from films that were perhaps more violent or had more content in it than you were used to seeing in your home environment. I think we need to keep in our minds that you can block and you can set parental guidance and settings, and that's fantastic. And I think following all that guidance, linking in with the schools and education specialists that are at the forefront of this is fantastic. But I would say that also creating an environment where, when a child, not if, when they see content that is inappropriate, when they have an incident where on a Snapchat, within the Snapchat ecosystem, someone says something to them that makes them feel, like they are being bullied, or a negative comment. It's the what next bit. Like I was saying about the physical, like a burglary on a street. It's the what do we do next? How do we communicate it? Who do we talk to about it? How do we break it down into something that can be learned from to move forward? And I think a healthy cyber digital conversation is one where, certainly with younger children in particular, they can feel like they can talk to you about the things that they see. And there's been a recent case of a platform called Omegle, causing a huge amount of concern for schools and parents alike. It's a form of chat roulette where you can literally speak to anybody across the world, which is once a terrifying concept, but actually that's one of the concepts of online gaming. So again, I think we sort of try to block the things. Let's take the blocking out. Let's talk about the concepts and encourage young people to be able to call it out. And again, like the bystander training of seeing something on the street or in your gym or in an environment that doesn't look right, or in a bar, when somebody is physically, aggressing somebody else. It's what do we do? What do we say? When do we step in and when do we step away? Exactly the same principles online. And I think we need to not be afraid of those conversations. And I think we need to be also looking at cases where, certainly I know from my experience with my nieces, for example, they're so clever. They know where these settings are now, And so I think that on one hand, there's encouraging digital literacy. And, these are going to be digital creators. These are young people for whom, me at 44, I sort of bridge that gap of knowing and remembering zero internet. But I'm also, able to kind of navigate around to a certain extent. These young people now from 8 downwards, they're growing up with technology literally glued to them. And I do believe there's going to be a benefit to that. There's going to be a move to a world where we are going to need to and have to become more exceptional, because we're going to be facing more and more crises. And I'm fully confident that technology will be able to be part of the solution, as opposed to just be seen as a problem. But I can understand how terrifying it is. And with young people, the young people in my life, it's enabling them to call it out themselves, a bit like physical risk, calling it out online, calling it out for other people, being other people's bodyguards in real life and digitally. I think is the way that we will come together as communities, online communities and physical communities. So yeah, safety in numbers, I think, is the conclusion.
Yeah, it's also quite important for parents to actually learn, because, these things move so fast that half the time you don't know what you should be warning them about, because it's, like you said, this roulette thing, I never heard of it. I'd heard about be there or be here or something, where you have to share what's in front of you, what's behind you, in order to see what they've sent to you. And it's just like, what? Trying to keep up. Be real, that's what it's called.
But I think, again, if you are keep curious, and keep curious around your own feeling of safety. And I always tie it back in with physical and mental health. If you are aiming to be in the best possible physical, and that's not doing marathons, it's getting up and getting that morning sunlight, and understanding that movement and nutrition and hydration will keep you safe, because your physical and your mental health will be in check. If you can't run away from something, you're not safe. If you can't identify something that's unsafe because your mind is clouded with other things, you're not going to be safe. So I think, people always say, well, how, physical, mental health, why is that so important? Well, actually, I think it's foundational to being able to identify what you need to be worried about. We're evolutionary beings. It doesn't matter if it's a digital space or a physical space. We are getting, fully evolved to understand what is not right and what is right in both contexts. So I think being able to be, certainly as a parent, being able to really see the wood from the trees and really help to understand that young people are evolving in a completely different frame of reference than we did. Learn from it, be curious about it, ask those questions. If there's an app called Be Real, if that there's a platform called Omegle, ask a young person. I think there's this concern that by asking, you're going to flag it up and they're going to shuffle away and go and download it. Well, I think we're past that. And the worst examples I've seen are when parents didn't realize that with all of the safety measures in place, it was simply a play date away, or in an inadvertent Saturday shopping session where somebody showed somebody something else, and before you know it, you've got a child who's completely oblivious. And I think I would prefer there to be an awareness, as opposed to that disempowerment of no awareness of all the sort of things that can go wrong, because then you hone that gut from an earlier age.
Yes, and security may have always been a physical and mental thing, but I mean, I think that mental security is becoming a lot more of an issue, isn't it?
And you can set up what I can call controlled mistakes. You can perhaps set, it sounds awful, set little traps along the way, but you can perhaps simulate things that might go wrong, and see how they respond to it. You could perhaps take off a setting and see, what that means, and how that child responds to that, or talk about the settings and say, this is why we're doing this. And only you are an expert at your child's development at each stage, and don't think it's something that can be sort of simply outsourced to the education community. Although I would be asking questions of teaching every step of the way. What's the best guidance? What's the best resources? Because teachers are given a lot more frontline guidance and advice by people like the National Cybersecurity Centre, because they are then able to disseminate that information in quick time to large numbers of young people. But I think, that curiosity of saying, look, here's a mistake, or here's something that I've done wrong. I think that's quite powerful too. Look, I clicked on this link, and now what's happened is I've had to reset everything. We've had to learn about passwords. Some of the best experiences I've had with my nieces has been setting 3-word passwords. The best passwords you can create are 3 random words, some numbers and letters. So things that you see around you, and it's hilarious. Sort of donut, green, and tea. Then that's your 3 words with a few random numbers and a few random sort of exclamation marks. And so that idea that you can create safety through good practice and through interaction, and be on that same level. We're all on the same level. If we're talking about password changes, no different to being an 8-year-old to being an 88-year-old. An 8-year-old or 9-year-old can grasp the concept of 3 different words, creating more of a safe environment for them on Snapchat or whatever platforms they're on. And I think also, having now experienced the sort of clients I work with who have given their young people phones and devices to be safe, versus others that have chosen not to, that's a really interesting compare contrast too, because no way is the right way. It's just a different way. And so I think understanding how you can, even if a child doesn't have their own device, how you can start to really let that child feel like they have that freedom to ask and explore and ask questions, because they will come into contact with children for whom a phone has been given at a younger age. And I think we need to lose this whole judgment piece around those that have and those that haven't. And it comes from a place of fear, but I think go into the fear, dig into it. There's plenty of resources out there. We are an open business who helps to guide and navigate regardless of whoever you are. So get in touch. There's resources on our website. There's navigation tools on our website to help you to understand where to go next. Lean into it and be curious. And I think that's a really good, healthy mindset to be in.
And just before we say thank you and for talking to us again, tell us what is changing in the security environment. I mean, have you seen any obvious changes since we've gone into lockdown and come out of lockdown, and people are, having affordability issues and what have you? I mean, my car got stolen. I was quite shocked by it. I didn't think this is something that happened, and it happens very often apparently these days. So what would you say you've noticed has been a really big change in recent times from a security aspect?
So I think you've got the randomized to the targeted becoming much more obvious. So randomized attacks from a physical and digital perspective. So the ability for online gangs to have galvanized during the last 2.5 years and honed the craft. That's manifested in more and more people having more and more different sort of phishing scams. And we've all had the texts that say that they're from Royal Mail, click here, pay £1.34 and you'll get your parcel back. And particularly for a lot of older people, they have fallen foul of that because, it's a text telling me I've got something at the post office. Of course I'm going to do that. And I think that from a physical perspective, we've seen a lot more randomized, burglaries. Yes, the stealing of cars. I think there's a very simple way that you can, again, mitigation being key. If you've got a car key, keeping it in some sort of Faraday case or Faraday box when you're at home, because again, people will be walking down the street looking out for and ensuring that they are able to grab those different wavelengths because of the remote and wireless key locking system. So keep your key in a Faraday case. So there's different things that you can do to respond to that. But I go back to what I said about crime becoming something that is becoming more precision, but also more randomized. And I think we need to put what I call these dogs in the window. So for example, online, really good, strong password protocol and management, good device settings, disabling and enabling all of the things. So for location settings on social media devices, for example. And then in real life, just ensuring that you've got that street WhatsApp group or block WhatsApp group so that if something's not right, you can let people know. Ensuring that you have a fully charged mobile phone when you're out and about so you can use it as a navigation tool. I think we're living in uncertain times. Cost of living crisis is going to make a lot of people more and more desperate, and desperate times, desperate measures. But I think, again, it's that clarity, keeping ourselves physically and mentally able to ascertain what is a real threat and what is something that's going to leave you in a paranoid state. I don't want people to be going away from this thinking, oh my gosh, danger's all around me. I don't actually believe there's more danger than before. I just believe that we talk about it more. It's more obvious because of citizen journalism. And I think we have equally more and more tools at our disposal that we can put in place that are low cost, easy, and just creating that sort of secure lifestyle hygiene around us. And so, yeah, I mean, it's uncertain times make us feel uncertain, but we have control of how we feel. And feeling safe is something that should be a human right, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs. So keeping aware, keeping a community together, and being your own bodyguard, but being a bodyguard for other people, I think is a good methodology to adopt.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for talking to us. We're going to let you get off to your busy day. And for our listeners, if you want to get some more advice or get in touch with Kate, you can head over to our experts directory on our website. And I'm sure Kate will be delighted to help. Thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the London Property Podcast. Head over to londonproperty.co.uk and subscribe to our newsletter to receive latest updates.